Welcome to the Overcoming Adversity podcast. I'm your host, Michael Allison. Today's guest is Jeremy Britton. He's the CFO of Boston Trading. This guy here has been through his own fair share of adversities. Here to tell us about his story, how he got through some hardships in his life. Jeremy, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Great to be here.
Absolutely, man. So, learning more about your story, man, I could identify with you, and I know our listeners could listen to you, man. You had some financial woes and some things that was tied to like some legal issues, being sued and stuff like that. And you was able to bounce back, man. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about your story, and how you got to this point, man, of creating this company that you got now?
Story was, I guess, like way back. My parents were both school teachers. I'm one of 6 children. So usually mum was at home looking after the kids and dad was going to work. So we never had a lot of money. My folks never invested in property. They never bought stocks and shares. They never did any of that sort of stuff. And I didn't know that world existed until after I left home. And once I'd left home and I started to learn about these things, I go, oh my God, it's so fascinating. It's so amazing. It's like a whole new world. It's like being in color for the first time after living your life in black and white. And so, of course, I wanted to find out more and more about this stuff, and then also teaching other people about this stuff. And the best way to learn about it and teach about it is to actually work in that field. So I started working in financial planning when I was 19 years old and started my first business then.
Wow, man, that's pretty young to get into the financial space, man. That's kudos to you, man.
Yeah, I was very young and I was talking to like 60 and 70-year-olds about what they should do with all their money. And I was 19. I had like $2 to my
I do find that actually fascinating. Whenever I go to bankers, there's quite a few young people that's in there, and to find out like that's like the entry level when it comes to like the banking system per se in the United States, anyways.
Yeah.
So you've been through some financial hardship, man, right? And you got into the space of the cryptocurrency space. Can you tell us, why did you get into that space, and what were some of the issues that you were facing for you to get to that particular space?
Well, with my first business, that was like basically stock market. And cryptocurrency wasn't around when I was 19. I know I look like I'm very young, but I've been in the game for a long time. So I've spent more than 30 years in the stock market. And it was I was financial planning. I've had 13 different startups, and I've also done 10 years working in one of the big Australian banks as a financial advisor, working with stocks and investments and that sort of stuff. And one of my friends in 2012, he said to me, "Hey, you're a smart cookie. You should look into this Bitcoin thing." And I was like, "What's Bitcoin?" He's like, "Oh, it's this virtual currency, and like you just give me $10 and I'll give you a Bitcoin." I'm like, "What do I do with a Bitcoin?" "Oh, you can send it to other people." Like, why would I want that? Like, I've already got PayPal. I can already send money to other people. I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. And so I looked into it and just went, no, it's not for me. I don't understand why I want to have this invisible money that's not even recognized by the major banks and things like that. So I said no. And then it was, I think, 2015, late 2015, early 2016, when I was actually complaining to one of my friends, because we have a lot of outsourced virtual assistants. Like, someone does the internet, someone creates the website, someone does the social media, someone answers the phones, and they're usually in other countries where it's cheaper. And I'm paying these people, and sometimes it's $30 for a bank transfer to another country. And if they don't have a bank account because they live in a third world country, then you've got to send them cash via Western Union, which is even more expensive than $30. And I was complaining to Tom, saying, "Oh, it's so expensive to do this." He's like, "I just use Bitcoin." And I said, "I've heard of Bitcoin. What's Bitcoin again?" And he's like, "Well, you can send $1,000 to someone and it costs you 50 cents for the transaction." And I went, "I'm sold." Right? Like, he just said to me, it's money that you can email to people and it costs next to nothing. Because in the olden days, if I wanted to send you a picture of my cat, it would cost me like $2 or $3 to send it to you via your postal service, right?
Right.
Particularly international. But now I can email it to you for a fraction of a cent. So he just said, "Oh, it's money that you can email to people." And I went, beauty. So I started buying Bitcoin to pay our contractors with, because it was much cheaper than using the cash and the bank services. And despite the volatility, like the price of Bitcoin goes up and down. But if I sent you money at 9 o'clock and you cashed it out at 10 o'clock, you don't care about the volatility, right? You're not hanging on to it for. So I just started using it as a transaction. I didn't understand that there's only so much Bitcoin. I didn't understand it was like digital gold. I didn't understand these things. And then it was probably 8 or 12 months later that Ethereum came onto the marketplace, where people could start creating codes and tokens and things on the back of Ethereum. And lots of people were creating lots of tokens. A lot of them were rubbish. About 90% of them were rubbish, but some of them were good. And I was like, oh, this is just like a little stock market. People can create businesses on the back of this thing. I understand the stock market. So I started buying and investing in crypto. The stock market is only open from 10 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
You know, and then when New York shuts down, you got to wait for Tokyo or Australia or Japan to open up. But crypto was open 24 hours a day. So I could trade and invest 24 hours a day whenever I wanted to on all these different things. And I was making good money because I understood the stock market and how to do the research. So when I got into crypto, I could avoid all the 90% of the bad things and only get the good things and make really good money. So it's like, crypto to me is just an extension of the stock market. Simple.
So for the listeners that's listening, because I love this conversation, because most people that I've spoken to when crypto came out, they did not believe in it because they could not touch it, and it was not on a debit card or a credit card or anything like that. So they were not with it. Mm-hmm. Can you help explain to the listeners what is cryptocurrency, what is Ethereum, what is blockchain, and all of those different things that's tied to that space when it comes to the digital space of this financial currency?
But it's you've got to use an analogy and say, you know, I don't understand how my car engine works, right? I'm not a mechanic, but I'm comfortable enough to put petrol in one end and oil in the other and go for a drive because someone taught me how to do that. And I don't need to understand the ins and outs of it. And most people don't understand the ins and outs of the stock market. And if you said to someone, you know, where's your 401k, point to it, drive me past your 401k and point to it, you can't, right? So the stocks in Microsoft or Tesla or whatever you got, you can't pick them up and hold them. They're just a piece of paper. They don't exist anywhere. And so you've just got to trust in whoever's actually running the show, whether you like that company or whether your car's going well. But I've got 2 Boston Terriers. And it's morning time, so they're waking up and they want to play. That's why we have a little logo up here, is a Boston Terrier face.
I was going to ask you that.
So, something up there. You don't need to understand it fully. I don't understand my car fully, but I trust that somebody else does. And that's why we created the Boston Fund, is because most people who are in the stock market don't understand the stock market, and they're still comfortable buying a few stocks and shares in things. But there's some people who are like, not only do I not understand it, I don't have time to understand it. I don't have time to read books about it.
Right.
So can you do it for me? And that's how I spent, 30 years of my life, is because there's people out there who, they've got 5 or 6 children, they've got a business, they work full time or whatever. They don't have the time to research stocks. So they would come to me and say, here's $20,000, you go and invest it for me. And that's what I would do, with stock market and property and that sort of stuff. And more recently with crypto.
So understanding like investing is a risk, right? And people are coming to you with your business. How do you manage that and take on that responsibility, knowing that people are giving you X amount of dollars and they're trusting you to make good, smart, wise decisions?
Yeah. I mean, everything's a risk, right? Every time you jump in your car to go for a drive, it's a risk. There might be someone who's been drinking or not paying attention. When you cross the road, it's a risk. If you sneeze wrong, you can break your spine. So the idea is you either do all the homework yourself to manage that risk, or you find someone who's already done it for you. And so, I'm old enough to have been investing last century, shall we say. I was in my 20s. I took out a $500,000 loan. My first house, I only paid like less than $100,000 for a 7-bedroom mansion. Right? That's how old I am.
Where was this? United States or another country?
This was in Australia. A 7-bedroom mansion for under $100,000. And then within a year or two, I took out a $500,000 loan, like 5 times the size of my house. And I put that into the stock market. And so I bought a lot of stocks, obviously on leverage. I was paying interest. And a few months later, we had 9/11, the plane crash. Right?
Right.
For people who weren't alive during 9/11, they might imagine that not a lot of people were traveling the next day. You know, people canceled all their holidays, airline stocks went down, accommodation, all those sort of things. A lot of things crashed around the world. People thought there was going to be an extended war. But with my $500,000 loan, yes, I had invested into some airline stuff, but I'd also invested into other things. And when the proverbial hits the fan, there's one of my favorite sayings is there's always a boom on somewhere, right? So when the stock market busts, often people will pull their money out of the stock market, they'll put it into property or they'll put it into bonds. When people thought there was going to be a war on, they started stocking up on bottled water and tinned foods and things like that. So even though the airline stocks had gone down, stocks in grocery stores went up. And this is how we create a balanced portfolio. So even with the crypto, like we didn't know 9/11 was going to happen, but we just know diversify, right? We didn't know the pandemic was going to happen back in 2020, but we diversified. And so when the pandemic happened and the stock market dropped by 60%, our fund went up by 50% because we'd invested into the fiber optics that run the internet, that run the cryptocurrency, because all the cryptocurrencies and all the stocks and shares, they all run on the internet, on the fiber optic cable. And we invested into that because we don't know what's going to be the best stock or what's going to be the best crypto. It's like saying what's going to be the fastest car on the road today. I don't care because I own the toll road, right? And everybody's got to pay the toll. So when the pandemic came and all the professionals, doctors and lawyers and accountants had to work from home on Zoom, the fiber optics went up in value. And of course, the hospitality workers who couldn't go and make their pies and wait on tables, they had to sit at home watching Tiger King on Netflix using the fiber optic cable. So again, it's one of those things like, you know, you've probably seen your 401k. It's like a dartboard. And there's this sliver and this sliver. And some of those are designed to just sit there and sit there and sit there like a bulletproof vest. You don't need it every day. But when the proverbial hits the fan, that's the part of the portfolio that's really going to take off and balance out other things and manage your risk for you.
So let me ask you this question, because you just mentioned 9/11 and you mentioned the pandemic, right? And are you someone that look at like indicators and things in regards to understanding trajectories of what things could be doing or the direction of where things could be going? And then for someone that's listening, right, can you talk a little bit about what does a good portfolio look like? Because people could invest in bonds, mutual funds, stocks, crypto, and all those things and stuff like that. What does that look like for a person, or should look like?
Well, it's been for centuries, like for hundreds and hundreds of years, the ideal portfolio was like 60% stocks, 40% bonds, right? In Australia, it's more like 60% stocks, 40% property. We don't have a big bond market over here, but a lot of people do invest into property, which is, again, property goes well when the stock market goes poorly, so it balances out. But obviously, in the last 15 years, the highest performing asset in the marketplace has been cryptocurrency. So people are now going back to their models that they've had for hundreds and hundreds of years and saying, okay, now the optimal portfolio is not 60 stocks and 40 bonds. It's actually 60 stocks, a little bit of bonds, a little bit of gold, a little bit of cryptocurrency. As the bonds are basically becoming more and more redundant. It's like, we do send parcels, and I'm sure you've bought socks and underpants online, as most people have, but we very, very seldom write a letter and send a letter. So the postman used to come 3 times a day in jolly old England. And now in the last 100 years, the postman comes once a day. But in New Zealand and in Australia, the postman comes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, only every second day, because there's so few letters coming in. There's mostly parcels. So
Wow.
we've updated things now because of the internet. As I say, you buy your socks and underpants online. You don't have to go to the store to buy those things anymore. So because cryptocurrency's now been around for 15 years, and it's starting to be used by the big institutions like BlackRock and Fidelity and ARK Invest, and major banks and institutions are using blockchain technology. So now the portfolio has shifted, and we just have to shift with it. So, but yeah, I mean, you be defensive, but yes, to answer your question, you can look at indicators and things like that. Here's my puppy. You can look at indicators. So my first book I wrote in 2006. And back then I was using the economic clock, which is a tool that's about 300 years old. And it basically says what's going to happen at what time. Because if the clock's just struck 1, pretty sure that 2 o'clock's going to come after that, and then 3 o'clock's going to come after that. Even if the battery's low, it'll eventually get there, because it only goes one way. As the economic clock's about 300 years old. And I studied this thing because I didn't know, when I was 19, I didn't know much about markets. So I studied history to see what happened, what happened in the war, what happened when the interest rates were low, what happened when the interest rates were high, what happened when it was peacetime versus wartime and things like that. So you start to see these patterns, and the economic clock is a tool to see when the patterns will occur. So in 2006, I was looking at the Fannie Maes and the Freddie Macs and the increasing mortgages that were being given to people's dogs and cats and children. If you've seen The Big Short, you'll know what was going on behind the scenes. Yeah. Michael Burry didn't warn anybody in the movie. He just, invested the right way. I wrote a book in 2006 and said, look, all of this is going to come tumbling down. The property market is going to collapse because of all these ninja loans that are people giving to their dogs. No income, no job, no assets, ninja. And it's also going to affect the stock market because banks are going to go broke. So the market was going wonderfully well in 2006. So I was kind of like the kid on the Titanic saying, look, stop the party. There's an iceberg coming up. No one wanted to stop the party because everybody's property was going up. Everybody's stocks were going up. And I was warning people. I didn't sell very many copies of my book, only a few thousand. But then after 2008, when the proverbial hit the fan, it turned out I was right. That's when people started calling me and say, oh, can we interview you for your New York radio show? Can we put you on our TV show? Can we put you on So all of a sudden, everybody wanted to know my opinion. And again, the interesting thing is, we didn't know the pandemic was going to happen, right? We didn't know there was a virus in a lab in China, didn't know any of that stuff. But the same indicators were flashing in late 2019. The interest rates spiked very high on overnight repo. The banks, the copper prices were going down. So in our newsletter, the free newsletter that we give out on the website, October 2019, we said to people, get out of the stocks. We don't know what's going to happen, but the stock market's going to crash because this is the same indicators that were flashing before the 2008 crisis. So get out of the stocks, get into gold, silver, and Bitcoin. All right. And then 6 months later, again, we didn't know it was going to be a pandemic, but the pandemic happened. Gold went up 50%, silver went up 100%, Bitcoin went up 600%. And of course, the stock market tanked. So the people who read the newsletter and active investors like, oh my God, you guys just always know what's going to happen. So we got a fair idea because if this, and this happens, there's about an 80% chance of a crash. And it's always good to be cautious because if there's not a crash, you can always jump back in again. Right. Sometimes you got to follow the history, and then you can learn what's coming up. That's how they do the weather report. They don't have a crystal ball. They just look. The last 10 times the clouds were shaped like this, and the humidity was this, and the wind speed was that. It rained. So that's why they say there's an 80% chance of rain. Sometimes it won't rain, but when it's your money, it's a bit more serious than getting the clothes wet on the washing line.
Let me ask you this, man. So you've had a a great deal of experience, obviously, in the financial space. For guys and ladies that are listening, right? They themselves have kids, right? And they themselves, obviously, our older audience has probably been a working class doing things, right? Can you talk a little bit about getting into investing into yourself and how important that is? Because you got into the business at 19 years old and you got to see a lot, learn a lot, right? And you've seen the benefits of if you're investing and if you're like doing some wise things and smart things with your money. Can you talk a little bit about that in regards to like investing at a young age opposed to like waiting to like the ladder of your life or your career?
There's two things. You said investing in yourself, which is absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am without going out off my own back, because I didn't learn the stuff at home. My parents never touched stocks, shares, properties, anything like that. And I didn't learn the stuff at school. There's no class on how to file your taxes. There's no class on you know, how to beat Wall Street when you're at school. So it's after you leave school, investing in yourself and your own education. And I mean, I didn't have much money. You know, when I was 19, 20 years old, I was pretty well broke most of the time. And I would find books at a secondhand bookshop. And so I'd read The Richest Man in Babylon, and I'd read some investment books and things like that. I'd buy it for $2. And investing in yourself, in your own knowledge and your own confidence. So, you know, years later, when I actually had acquired all this knowledge and I had the courage to write a book myself, you know, and my book, there's a lot of investment books out there who say, oh, buy blue chip stocks and things like that, right? It's all very generic. I mentioned the name of companies. You know, I was very, very specific. I did things that other people hadn't done. And even the guys who'd written 5 or 6 books before me, I was trying to contact them and get their advice, like, how do I write a book? How do I do this? And they're like, oh man, you can't mention specific companies. You'll get sued. You can't do that. You can't do that. And I'm like, okay, cool. Help me understand. Where is it written in the law that I can't do that? And they couldn't show me. Like, it wasn't illegal. It's just that no one had ever done it before. I'm like, well, I'm a first-time person. I got nothing to lose, literally. You know, I'm worth about $7,000 on a good day. So let's do it and see if I do get sued. You know, and I took chances and I took big risks. And even sometimes, like, you know, some of the authors that I was reading and buying the secondhand books at the bookshop for $2, you know, they'd be coming to town and like going to give a big talk on stage, and it's like $500 to go and see this guy. I want to see this guy. I want to learn the new stuff because I've been reading a book that's 10 years old, but I don't have the $500 to go and see this guy. So because the internet existed and because anybody can start a podcast, right? I contact the people who are selling the tickets and say, hey, can I get a free ticket? Because I'm going to interview this guy to be on my podcast. And they didn't say, oh, how many hundreds of thousands of listeners do you have? They just went, oh, you've got a podcast. You want to interview this guy? Cool. We'll get you a press pass, like a free ticket. And so I got to go just because I asked, right? You know, it's amazing. It's amazing, Michael. When you've got no money, you become really creative and clever at trying to do things. And then later on, once you've got money, you stop being creative because you don't need to be. You, oh yeah, I can spend $20,000 to go and see Tony Robbins live. Like, yeah, but it's much more fun when you're creative and it doesn't cost you anything. Then you can use the money for something else. So, but yeah, investing in your own education, investing in yourself, like building up the confidence. Like I was just a little financial planner from a little tiny town. And no one had heard of me. So when I wrote my book and I went to the publisher and said, will you publish my book? They're like, we've never heard of you. There's financial planners in my country with their own TV show and their own radio show, and guys who'd written like 6 books over the last 20 years that were very, very famous. No one wanted to publish me. I'm like, okay, well, then I'll publish myself. And I drove to every single bookstore within 3 hours of my house and said, hey, do you want to put my books on your shelf? And a lot of them said no. So I just wait till their back was turned. I'd put 3 books on their shelf and I'd walk out. Like, you can't go into a shop and steal a book, right? But
right.
is there a law against going into a shop and putting a book on a shelf and walking out empty-handed? I don't know. Right? So I did that. I called it shop gifting instead of shoplifting.
Oh, wow. Right? That's legendary,
I put 3 books
man.
into every single bookshop that I could. And then I bring up the radio station and say, hey, I've written this book. It's going to teach people how to invest and how to never have a market crash, always be invested in the right place at the right time. And the people on the radio show say, oh, who stocks your book? And I'll say, it's in this bookshop and this bookshop and this bookshop.
Oh, man, that was clever, man. I love it, man.
I gave them the books, right? So they could sell my book for $30 and it cost them nothing.
Right, right.
But then after they'd sold out those 3 books, someone else comes in and goes, I heard this guy on the radio. Can I buy his books? So the bookshop had to call me and then say, hey, can we buy a box of your books?
That was clever, man. That was clever.
Yeah. You got to do what you got to do.
I don't blame you, man. I don't blame you. Let me ask you this. So for our listeners, right, that may be struggling, right, with adversity in their life. And from your story, faced homelessness, some financial struggle, depression, all of those things were challenging, right? But you've been able to get out of that, man, and start several different companies and to get into the space of the company that you have now. How were you able to do that, man? How did you find yourself to like push through these things, fight through these things, and get to where you're at now today, man?
I think I was very lucky. I worked in a very left brain, analytical, mathematical field. Like all my friends were, you know, financial planners, accountants, mortgage brokers, stockbrokers. And a lot of us worked, you know, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. Some of my friends were like getting cancer in their 30s, having heart attacks in their 50s because it's very stressful and you're burning out on this side of the brain. But my office happened to be in the main street down the beach. And every day I'd see these guys who were walking past with their surfboards and things like that, really happy. They're going for a surf. And these guys, like, they're really happy, but they've got no money, right? They're barefoot. They don't have a car. They've just got the surfboard and they're sitting around, they're surfing the waves, but they're really, really happy. And yet they've got no money. It didn't compute for me because all of my friends were like, we get more money, just a bit more money. Like I'm already a millionaire, but if I get another 2 million, then I'll be happy, you know? And you're always on the hamster wheel. Right. So I became attracted to these guys who were happy and started to sit down with them and ask them questions. And I talked to a few surfers, like, I'm not into surfing, but there was guys who were meditators. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can try meditation because if I'm surfing and I fall off, I might hurt myself, right? Or I might get eaten by a shark. But meditation, you just get a sore bum, right? That's about it. So I began to hang around with these guys who I thought had mastered the art of happiness because I hadn't. I was stressed out all the time. You know, my relationship was bad because I was never at home. And I was always, you know, chasing more money, more money, more money. But then because I was so stressed, you'd spend the money on massages or alcohol or cigarettes or whatever to make yourself feel more relaxed and better. So when I started to hang out with these guys who were surfers and meditators and yoga people and Buddhist monks and things like that, I go, they're really happy. That's what I want. And they enjoyed hanging out with me, not because they wanted to be multi-millionaires, but they're like, oh yeah, I've got $50 I can throw in the stock market. Can you show me how to double that? So I'll have 100. And I'm like, cool. I could help them and they could help me. And then, you know, bad things happened to me. I got sued. Some guy tried to bankrupt me and steal my business. I lost my daughter. My relationship broke up. And I was pretty well suicidal at that point. It was towards the end of the year. And the doctors actually placed me on suicide watch. Wow. Because they said, you know, you've had a bunch of bad things happen to you. And a lot of people, if they're alone on Christmas, that's when they take themselves out. So, you know, alone for the holidays is never good. You should always have a few friends around, even if you can't find your family. So the doctors had placed me on suicide watch and they'd given me some pills to take. I had very bad reactions to the pills. I took a couple of pills and was so zombied, I didn't take any more of the pills. And I was talking to my friends, the meditation guys. And, you know, when you're this stressed, you can meditate and it'll take you down a little bit. But I was literally underwater. You know, I was like suicidally depressed. And I was literally like, I'm going to take myself out. And one of my mates told me about this retreat where you can go and meditate for 10 days. And it's great. They have them in every country of the world. It's called Vipassana. And it's 10 days. You go and meditate. They provide free accommodation and free food. And it's really intense. It's like the boot camp of meditation. Like you're meditating, you know, 16 hours a day for 10 days with the masters. And he said, that's probably what you need. Like a normal meditation is not going to lift you out of this funk.
All right.
Many days I couldn't get out of bed. And he said, you go off and do this course. And I literally said to a friend of mine at the time, like, okay, I'm going to go and do this course. It's great that it doesn't cost me anything. I get 10 days away with no mobile phones, no emails, you know, and they provide the food, they provide the accommodation. And if it doesn't work, I can always kill myself in 10 days' time. That's what I said to my friend. Like, if it doesn't work, I've always got my backup plan. Like, I can throw myself under a bus next Tuesday. And I went off to this thing literally suicidally depressed. And the first couple of days were absolutely horrible because in our society, we're so used to being pinged all the time. There's an ad on us, there's an ad on the, you know, on the footpath, there's emails, there's phone calls, there's always something stimulating your brain. And you go to this meditation thing and it's just like people meditating all day. And then you have a meal and then you meditate and then you have a meal and you meditate. And for the first few days, my brain was starving for input. Like literally, it's not getting anything. It was really, really uncomfortable. And like 3-4 days, I hadn't slept because my brain was just kind of going crazy. It was like a tantruming toddler. It's like, you know, give me something, give me something, give me something. I'd go to the toilet and I'd take off my shirt and I'd read the label on my shirt because I had nothing to read for that time. And I actually woke up one of the guys, like, you know, midnight on the 4th day, said, look, I've got to leave. I've got to go home. I can't handle this anymore. I haven't slept. You know, my brain's going crazy. And he just said to me, take a breath. Look, that's okay. Not everybody can handle boot camp, you know. But if you leave now, you'll be driving home at midnight and you might have a crash and you haven't slept very well. So let's just go for a little walk and we'll have a talk and then go back to bed. And when the sun comes up in about 3 or 4 hours, then, you know, if you still feel like leaving, then you can leave, but at least you're driving home at sunrise and you can see things. So I went, okay, cool, that's what I'll do. So I had a walk with this guy. I don't know what he did to me, whether he had magic hands or whatever. But after I walked around with this guy, went back to bed and I slept like a baby for the first time in 4 days. And then I got up and I meditated all day and I slept and I did the full 10 days. And literally I was suicidal. I was depressed. You know, I was going to take myself out of the world when I went to the thing. And when I came out of it, I was just like a 5-year-old kid, right? Like a 5-year-old kid doesn't need a reason to be happy. They don't need a reason to skip and dance and be joyful. They don't have to wait for the lottery to win. It's like, hey, I'm alive, I'm awake, the sun's up, you know. And 5-year-old kid doesn't care whether you're black, white, green, old, young, male, female. 5-year-old kid will just talk to anyone for any reason. Oh, look at my shirt, look at this. And that's what I was like when I came out. Like people literally didn't recognize me because I was like so down. And then when I came out, I was so up. And they were like, this is weird. Like, where's this guy? I said, well, I took him to the bush and I killed him. I took over the body, right? This is the new me. And you know, anyone who's done like one of those motivational, inspirational seminars, like you're walking tall for about like 3 days afterwards and then it wears off and you go back to your life.
Right.
But this is me, what, 13, 14 years later, you know? And I meditate for an hour every day just to keep the dose up. But I know that I've found the cure for the buildup of stress in the body, buildup of stress in the mind. It's simple. It's 1,000-year-old technology.
Let me ask you this, man. As you're telling me that, I thought about when I was in a suicidal space, depression and all those things from some of the things I was dealing with, man. And obviously you went through your path of getting the help that you need. When you look back at it 15 years back now, right?
Mm.
And like self-reflection, what are some like lessons and things like that that you've learned about yourself, knowing some of the things that you just spoke about, or how your life was going, how your career was going, and where you're at now, man?
I guess I learned that human beings are remarkably resilient. We can go through a lot. One of the books that I read way back when I was super stressed, I can't remember the guy's surname right now, but his first name was Sandy, and he had a beautiful wife. He had 3 young daughters. His eldest daughter was about 15 or 16, and he had a great life. The girlfriend had fallen in with the wrong crowd, and she eventually split up with his boyfriend and just said, look, I don't want to be with you anymore. You're a bit toxic. And that kid went and got a gun, came round to the house while Sandy was at work, and he killed the girlfriend for dumping him. Then he killed the 2 sisters. Then he killed the mum.
Wow.
And like, this guy comes home from work, his entire family had been shot dead for just a stupid reason. You know, it wasn't even a robbery or anything like that, you know. And I'm like, holy crap, like that's pretty freaking bad. Like what I'm going through, you know, I've almost lost my business. I've just lost my daughter. I've lost my partner, but she's still alive, right? My stuff wasn't as bad as that. And this guy, he got through his stuff. He wrote a book about it to inspire others. And I go, people are amazing. Like people are amazing. There's athletes out there with no arms and no legs who are winning gold medals, right? Who the hell am I to complain about my life? Really? You got to put things in perspective and say, why can't we be like a 5-year-old? Just be happy the sun's up and, you know, you've got 2 hands.
I love the fact that you took the chance to bet on yourself, man. And I also hear that like looking at life from a different lens and different perspective makes you appreciate life a lot more, man. I always tell people when I was in Iraq getting blown up by a car bomb, I was 10 seconds away from not being here, man.
Yeah.
And to be here now after knowing, when you say 9/11, that immediately brings me to Iraq as soon as you said that. And knowing what that was like, I'm so much more appreciative of life and things that I have now, man. Can you talk a little bit about once you've been on this transformational journey, right? And you've had like this pivotal moment in regards to having this shift, right? Because you was chasing after like the career and all the things that came with that. Who were some people that was influential to you, man, that helped like steered you and guide you? Was it some of the people that was there when you was going through the meditation phase, or who were some people after that as well too that like kept you on that path for not going back?
It's interesting because as I was doing a lot of this stuff in the dark, and I was following other people, and because I didn't have the money to get to them, I was buying their books secondhand for $2. And in the book, you only find out what they want to tell you, right? You're not going to find out all their secrets unless you sit down with these people. And because I was bold enough to ask for the press passes to a few things and go along, and I'd put my hand up and say, can I ask a question of the guy who is speaking? And after 2008 global financial crisis, and I was interviewed on a few radio stations around the world because they want to know, how did you know and how did you predict this? We want to talk to you. And then they didn't expect that a financial planning guy is also going to talk about meditation, also going to talk about happiness. And one of these guys like, hey, you're this like little white Oprah from Australia sort of thing. I'm like, no. Nobody's Oprah. He's like, oh, you should have your own show. I'll talk to the producer. And I'm like, yeah, good one. And an hour later, the producer phoned me and said, we want you to have your own radio show in New York. And I'm like, well, I'm in Brisbane. He's like, that's okay. You can phone it in. Every Tuesday morning, we'll do the phone in from Australia, and it'll be the Monday night show in New York. And it's like, you want to be in a show? You've got 52 shows for the next 12 months. I'm like, I can't fill that content. you know, I can talk about myself for an hour or two, but that's it. I can't do it every single week. They said, do what Oprah does, find guests who are smarter than you and better than you and interview them. And I went, oh, that's easy because everybody's smarter and better than me. But I had the chance then to ring people, and like I can contact Arnold Schwarzenegger and say, hey, I've got a show in New York. Can I interview you on my radio show? And I could ask whatever questions I want because it was my show. So I asked Arnold Schwarzenegger, what type of meditation do you do? And he's like, oh, it's funny. No one ever asked me that question. But he actually does transcendental meditation and has done since 1976. Right. And every single person who came on my show, you know, 50, I think it was about 100 people by the end, because I went for over 2 years, the radio show, and then got a TV show after that. Every single person who came on the show, I asked them, what type of meditation do you do? Tony Robbins talks about meditation. I got to interview Tony Robbins' son, and he does a particular type of chant meditation. But all the athletes, you know, ones who'd recovered from cancer or losing a limb and become a great athlete, and ones who'd recovered from bankruptcy and became a multimillionaire and things like that, every single one of them was a meditator. But they never talked about it unless someone asked them. I'm like, this is fascinating stuff. There's things that the rich and powerful elite don't actually tell you that they're doing this stuff, but they will if you ask them. So,
speaking of meditation, when people are meditating, right, what realm or what space is meditation allowing you to go or take you? And I'm asking that as in, as you shared, like it creates like a level of revelation for you, and like doors open up, your eyes open up and things like that. And you see things from like a different stratosphere. Can you talk a little bit about that experience, actually like going through it, but like, what does it look like when you're in it and going through it? Because you had a massive breakthrough.
Yeah. I'd compare it to like a 4 or 5 year old kid. And they say, like, if you want to learn a foreign language, you got to start when you're very young, because if a kid's 4 or 5 years old and, you know, mum's Spanish and dad's, I don't know, Norwegian, and they've got a Japanese friend, that kid can pick up 3 or 4 languages very, very easily in the first couple of years of your life. But you try learning a foreign language once you're 20, 30, 40 years old. It's very difficult, you know. And again, being happy and being healthy is much more difficult when you're 20, 30, 40 years old. All right. We spend a lot more time worrying, stressing, sitting down, staring at a screen, whether you're watching TV or whether you're working or whether you're just scrolling through social media. Whereas young kids use their body a lot more. They're not overthinking. And for me, I think meditation is slowing down the side of my brain that was overactive, which is the left brain analytical, mathematical, worrying formula that is, you know, it's good because I use it for work, right? But sometimes it's used too much. It's like exercise one side of your body too much, you're going to end up with really big left bicep, and the right one just kind of hangs there, right? Because you're exercising it too much. So for me, meditation slows down this side of the brain and allows it to catch up with the other one. And then you're actually using your whole mind rather than just one side of it. Because for me, you know, I'm not particularly creative. That's why I named the company after the dog, right? I don't play music. I don't paint. I don't draw. I don't write stories or anything like that. So the right side of my brain, the creative side, is underactive. And meditation allows me to sync both sides of the brain and actually get into that genius zone. You know, Da Vinci is probably the greatest genius we've ever had in the history of man. Da Vinci could write left-handed and right-handed. You know, he could carve stone and he could also paint a picture, and he could write music and things like that. And every time we analyze Da Vinci's art, we find more and more secrets hidden in it. Like the picture of the Last Supper has actually got musical notes. If you follow the hands of the disciples and the loaves of bread, it's actually musical notes that spells out a funeral march, right? Because Jesus was about to die. He's hiding a little joke in there for anybody who reads music. But that's not me, you know. But just having those little flashes of occasional genius is you know, people meditate and they don't realize it. I mean, there's people sitting at the desk all day worrying about a problem, and then They go to the bathroom. You know, they have a shower for 5 minutes. They sit on the toilet for 5 minutes and they go, oh my God, I've worked out the solution. You step out of that zone. Or you're driving in the car and you're kind of transfixed because you're not thinking about left foot down, right foot down, blah, blah, blah. You're just in the zone where you're driving on automatic pilot, and it allows the brain to slow down. And then you have that flash of genius and you go, oh my God, I've just figured out the solution. So people meditate a little bit every day without realizing it. Oftentimes it's in the shower. You have those great thoughts. But if you can train your brain, and you can meditate for half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening. And there's plenty of free apps. There's plenty of free audios and things that you can listen to. And it's just getting into the discipline, because you're not going to go, oh, I meditated once and then I built the Sistine Chapel, right? You can't go to the gym once and look like Arnold. So it's just a little bit every day, a little bit of slowing the brain down, a little bit of building the body up. And over time, it has a massive, massive effect. And you can become this genius version of you when you're using both sides of your brain, when you're using your body as well as your mind. It's amazingly powerful.
I agree with you, man. I was interviewing somebody else, and they were telling me that meditation and gratitude and some of these things, if they were implemented when kids were in school, it'll help them on their growth path. Because what we as a society do, we allow other things to impact them and influence them, and they get lost and distracted out here in this world, and now they get into the rat race, and it's not even a thought anymore. And then we wonder why we have some of these contributing factors when it comes to the depression, the anxiety, the suicide, and all of these different things, man.
Yeah, as I said, the things that you learn at school is like trigonometry and reading Jane Austen, and I don't know, like, unless I was going to write an 18th century novel, or unless I was going to build a bridge, it's probably useless. A lot of the things I learned at school are useless to me. The things I learned after school is how to file your taxes, how to invest in the stock market, how to be happy, how to exercise and look after your body. Those are some of the really important things that should be taught in schools. They're starting to teach meditation in prisons now. And
I've heard that.
When they get the prisoners to meditate, they become more creative. They become less inclined to fight with each other and with the guards. They become less inclined to re-offend after they get out. So it's amazing skill that absolutely, until we can get it in the school system, you're just going to have to do it yourself. And thankfully now, there are a lot of apps and there are YouTube channels and things like that where you can learn all this stuff. So you don't have to pay and go to a special class. You don't need to cross town to do it. You just pick up your phone.
Yes. So before we get out of here, man, I wanted to touch on some things that you have tons of experience in. Let's talk a little bit about business, man. You've had the opportunity to start a business, close businesses, and you've had some ups and downs with that. Can you talk a little bit about what is it like as an entrepreneur, and where does that grit and resilience come in there? And what are some things that you could leave with our audience that are some key takeaways when it's operating a business, running the business, whether it's going to be around marketing, communications, the operations, the systems, all of those different things that's tied into a business?
It's a lot. It's a lot. There used to be this thing, I don't know who first said it, but it was just like going around. They'd always say, do what you love and the money will follow, right? Well, that's bullshit. Because do what you love, you'd be sitting on the couch watching Netflix eating chips, right? And you're not going to make money doing that. So if you've got that written on somewhere on your gratitude journal, cross it out. The improved quote is, share what you love and the money will follow. So if you love watching Netflix on your couch, that's cool, but share it, okay? You got to write a movie review. You got to tell your friends about that. You got to start a blog, and then you can start selling advertising on the blog post, right? For me, when I discovered the stock market for the first time at 19 years old and going, oh my God, this is amazing, I would share it with other people. I would teach other people about it. And other people go, wow, that's great. You love it so much, but it's super complicated. Can I just give you the money and you look after it for me? I'll say, sure. And while you're here, I'll teach you about what I'm doing with your money and how I'm doing it with your money. And some of them listen, some are like, yeah, whatever. So sharing what you love, and it is really, really important to do what you love, because there's people out there going, oh, you can make $1 million a week drop shipping on Amazon, or you can make $1 million a week as a YouTube influencer, or whatever. And while that might be great for them, if you don't have the personality to be a YouTube influencer or a drop shipper or whatever, it's never going to work for you, because there's going to be that third day when you wake up and go, oh, this is hard, man. I've got a headache, and like my show's about to start and I just don't want to do it today. But if you really, really love what you do, you'll do it when you're sick. You'll do it when you're running late. You'll do it. You'll be thinking about it while you're sleeping. You'll be thinking about it while you're driving your car. So whatever that passion is for you, the thing that you do when you're distracted from what you're supposed to be doing, you might be, I don't know, writing a movie blog for a living, but in all your spare time, you're painting. Freaking hell. Share the painting with people, right? Share that painting. You can run painting classes, or you can sell your painting, or you can, run tutorials on how to paint. I don't know. But whatever you do that you love to do, whatever you do in your spare time, there's someone in the world who's getting paid to do that professionally.
You're right.
Right? You just got to find out how to connect the dots, and you can actually get paid to do what you love from sharing what you love professionally. And all the rest of the stuff will come. Like I said before, like I'm not super creative, right? I created the world's first crypto mutual fund because other people had created stock mutual funds, right? It's pretty easy to do that. But I had to come up with a name for it. And I'm like, I couldn't think of Kodak or Microsoft or Tesla or whatever. Like, there's my dog. I'll name the company after the dog, right? I'm not creative, but I need creative people. So I hire someone to do the logo and do the things and do the marketing and that sort of stuff. Richard Branson owns an airline, but he doesn't know how to fly a plane, right? He doesn't hand out the peanuts as he's walking down the aisle. So if you really, really love what you're doing, then you can find other people who can do those other things for you. But it's never hard work. And this is, I had a stress-related heart attack when I was 33 years old, right? So, and I was not doing what I loved. I was doing things for the money. And after 33, when you've had heart surgery and you go, man, I'm young and my kids are young and I don't want to die sitting at my desk. I need to change my life. So I changed my life and I do what I love every single day. And there's literally, like, because we've just gone through the holiday season, right? And I'm like, after lunch on Christmas Day, I want to do some work because I feel like it, but I can't call anyone because everyone's on holidays, right? And the next day, like, I want to do some work, but I can't because it's a public holiday. It's Boxing Day. And there's even days I'm like, oh, it's Sunday. I can't call anyone today, but I really want to because I love what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, absolutely. Do what you love, share what you love, connect with the person who's doing it professionally. All the other stuff you'll work out, because I don't know how to code a website. I don't know how to run a marketing campaign, and I don't even answer my own phone when it rings, right? I've got someone who does that for me. But I focus on doing the thing I really, really love. And when you love it, you get better at it. Like, no one ever told you that you had to play baseball, right? If you love baseball, you're out there every day smacking it, right? If you love basketball, you're out there every day shooting hoops. No one's paying you to do the training. You just love doing it, so you do it. And you become better at it because you love doing it. Keep it up.
That was gold, man. Before we get out of here, man, you've had tons of experiences. You shared a good bit of knowledge of your financial background, some things that you've been through and how you had breakthroughs and things like that. For the listeners that's listening, man, what are some key takeaways that you could share with our audience from your life and from some of your personal stories, man?
Wow. Man, there's always someone smarter than you. There's always someone better than you. Don't be upset by that. Learn from them. Again, invest in yourself, invest in your knowledge. we were taught when we were at school, like if you're bad at math, you have to work extra hard and you have to study hard to do the math, right?
Right.
But if you're really good at English, then don't worry about that so much. But when you're out in the real world, you know, like I said, Richard Branson doesn't fly the plane. He gets someone else to do that. Henry Ford wasn't good at maths. He hired someone else to do that, right? We hire accountants to do the books because I'm not very good at doing the books. That's not my strong suit. So learn from other people and see what they did. And oftentimes it's like they worked on themselves until they got better. One of my friends who is a self-made billionaire. There's very few self-made billionaires in the world, right?
Right.
But he was literally broke, and then started working for someone else, and then started getting better and better. But he had a stutter when he was a kid, and he just would read books out loud and work on his speech until he could actually get over the stutter, because that for him was a stumbling block when he went to business meetings and sales meetings and things like that. So that was something he had to do himself. He felt he had to do himself. But obviously everything else, once you got the passion and once you got a bit of cash flow, other people will come and help you. You know, I've had other people help me in my business without being paid, particularly when I started a new business and I had no money. You know, 13 startups, right? And the most expensive one, I think I spent $5,000 or $6,000 to start it up, right? But a lot of the times it was, I'm starting this new business. I'm really excited about this thing. Will you come and work with me? And people would come in because they knew that I was excited about it. They were excited about it, and they knew the money would come, because share what you love and the money will follow. And then you get to the stage, you know, a few years later when you're no longer excited about that. And that's when you can sell the business to someone else who is. And you can move on and say, look, I used to be really excited about that. Now I'm excited about this. I sell that business and I start this one. So always learning from other people. There's other people who have climbed the mountain or built the airplane or created a mutual fund before you. So learn from them. And there's a lot of people who will help you if you simply ask them.
Thank you, man. You gave us a good summary of mergers, acquisitions, some delegating. Nah, man, I think that really summed it all up and left it with some great wisdom, man. I think as entrepreneurs, we're always trying to like figure things out. If we don't know it, there's always someone that's willing to help us and get across that finish line like you did. And what I realized before, I had purchased a franchise and I wanted to understand like how business operations work and how it ran. And once I got into the space of business, learning to work with other people, communicate with other people, and leveraging other people's talents and skills was another leadership skill that I had to start leveraging. And I say that because when I was in the military, leadership is a little bit different in regards to like someone telling you what to do, and you have to do it. And taking that into the business space was a different skill that I had to learn, but it was interesting, man. So what you're saying in regards to like having other people and leverage your skills and having other people buy in and believe in something that you believe in, and you being a leader and having that vision, and everybody's getting on board with that, man. So
you summed it up nicely, Michael.
So Jeremy, if anybody wanted to learn more about Boston trading, learn more about you, more about your company, man, how can they find you? How can they get a hold of you?
You'll find me at bostontrading.co. Don't let Google put the M on the end when the auto completes. It's bostontrading.co. You can find out about me. I've got all sorts of social medias. I've been on YouTube for, I don't know, 20 years or so. I've done a lot of, probably about 400 or 500 videos on YouTube about motivation, inspiration, meditation, that sort of stuff. I did 1,500 sunrise meditations down at my favorite beach. So like one every day for 5 years. And after those, I'd have my shower thoughts, right? I'd have my little flashes of inspiration. I'd record a video. So anybody who wants to learn more about that, I've got a whole YouTube channel. It's just like hundreds and hundreds of free videos that I've done over the years. But obviously this is my most recent business. let's chat again in 5 years' time and see if I'm still passionate about crypto. I might be passionate about something else. I might have sold this business by then. But right now, I'm absolutely loving it. Been loving it for this is our 9th year that we've been in operation. And yeah, very excited about it, loving it, and happy to connect with your listeners, and happy to give them a copy of my book, the stock market book that teaches you how to invest in the stock market. And I'm currently working on the one that teaches you how to invest in the crypto market. So,
absolutely, thank you so much, man. If you want, when we publish this podcast episode, we could drop that information in there for them to reach out to you and get that information as well.
Yeah. It'll all be on bostontrading.co. It'll be all central.
Absolutely. Well, Jeremy, man, thank you so much for being a guest on Overcome University podcast. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, to hear so much of your stories, man. I know our listeners are going to really, really appreciate this listen, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Love being here.
Until next time, guys, God bless.
Can't complain at all. Couple dollars in my pocket, no income and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.